Well, good afternoon and welcome to the latest edition of the Texas Public Policy Foundation's weekly live stream. You know, over the last year, it's hard to believe, here we are in February 2021, month 11 of flattening the curve. One of the silver linings to that has been that we started these live streams, and all of you who tune in each week, at least a few thousand of you live, and then many more of you as you watch recordings, have sustained this because we have the opportunity to bring on newsmakers, men and women, great patriots in this country, who are not only reading reality truthfully, as I like to say, whatever that particular policy problem is, but also giving us a sense of what the solutions are, trying to frame this in a way that gives us a sense of optimism, which I think in 2020 and 2021, we in America have certainly been able to use. And so today is no exception. We have two great American policymakers, gentlemen who have storied careers already at this point in their lives. And I think you're going to benefit a lot from this deep dive that we do today into immigration policy and border security. If we haven't had the chance to meet, I'm Kevin Roberts, host of this live stream and executive director of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Joining me today are Mark Morgan, the former commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and now one of my newest colleagues, Josh Jones, our senior fellow in border security studies at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Mark and Josh today are going to give us an insider's view. If you are someone who, like I, have been following the story of border security and immigration policy for years, and you're trying to make sense of what was going on a few years ago, what got fixed about what was going on, and now, just weeks into the Biden administration, the problems that we're facing, this hour is for you. There are no two better experts on border security, immigration policy, and in Josh's case, the internal workings of Mexican politics and the security coalition than these two gentlemen. So, Mark Morgan, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to turn to you first and ask the proverbial 30,000-foot question. You know, for our audience, obviously someone who's informed, intelligent person, might be in Texas, might be outside Texas. They're just trying to get a sense of what's going on new with the border and with immigration policy generally. How do you respond?
Yeah, Kevin, first of all, thanks for having me. I think this is a great forum. And unfortunately, what we've seen just in a few short hours, actually, after President Biden was sworn in, is what I referred to as with the stroke of a pen. He has made our borders less secure, our country less safe, and has really endangered the men and women risking so much on the front lines of our border to protect this country. If you take it, and here's an important issue that I talk about, and Kevin, you and I talked briefly about it before this, is you have to make sure you step back and look at the totality of what the current Biden administration is undoing. He is systematically undoing every single one of the network of initiatives from the previous administration that really was effective to address the illegal immigration crisis that we had in 2019. And by any measure of success that's out there, is that network of policies has been effective. And let me give you just a couple of quick stats. If you recall, in 2019, we were getting about 140,000 in a single month that were illegally entering. We had over 1 million in 2019. By February of 2020, we had reduced that flow by 75%. The immigration crisis being driven by families and unaccompanied minors by the coming up from the Northern Triangle had all but ceased. You know, in 2019, CBP and ICE combined, we had to release, because of the loopholes, about 500,000 illegal aliens into the country, never to be heard from again. That all but stopped. We ended catch and release through programs like the Migrant Protection Protocol. And I could go on, but right now, all of that is systematically being undone. And what I refer to what they call, Biden's administration calls immigration strategies, I'm really referring to those as open border strategies. Right now, if there's one last thing, and I'll turn it back over, but right now the strategy, it consists of, if you come to our country illegally, they're going to release you into the United States. Once you're here illegally, they're going to protect you from lawful deportation. And then as you remain here illegally, they're going to reward you with expansion of DACA, amnesty, and free healthcare. That's where we're at right now.
What an excellent, although very troubling summary, Mark. Thanks for that. Obviously, a lot of follow-up in terms of details, which we'll get to in the course of our conversation, but a perfect segue into similar kind of question for Josh Jones, our colleague here. Josh, of course, has great experience in the courtroom, is a recognized expert on the security situation inside Mexico. And what I might say for folks in the audience is that if you take Mark's expertise and you pair it with Josh's expertise, as you're about to see, you're going to get a 360-degree view of this policy situation. So Josh, same kind of question, 30,000-foot view of what's going on inside Mexico, south of the border, even into Central America, that is aggravating the problem that Mark has outlined.
I think that one of the real accomplishments of the Trump administration was the assistance that he was able to get out of the governments of Guatemala and Mexico, and to a lesser extent, El Salvador and Honduras, and stopping those migrant caravans as they were coming forward. He sort of strong-armed his way into it, particularly with the government there in Mexico. But they were a lot of the reason that those numbers did come down within the last 2 years was that the government of Mexico did a much better job of stopping those migrant caravans from coming north. So the question with the new administration coming in is going to be whether the government of Mexico, whether the Mexican president, whether the government of Guatemala are going to be similarly apt to participate in our border security strategy, which involves stopping those migrant flows before they actually get to the border. Just within Mexico, the security situation is floundering now. They're a government that is increasingly unable to protect its people from organized crime. A government that's increasingly being compromised by organized crime. So as we look at the situation on our border, it's important to realize the security crisis that's actually going on down within Mexico and within the Northern Triangle countries.
Well, again, very helpful, although troubling summary. I just want to ask you a quick follow-up, Josh, before returning to Mark about some of the impact of the Biden administration's policies. Just let's imagine we're able to take a trip down to Mexico and you're our tour guide and you're going to take us to where the problems you've just outlined in a general sense are most profound. Are there particular spots in Mexico, whether they be close to the border of the United States or elsewhere, that are just profound examples of the deterioration in security and in the rule of law that you've described?
I think you have to start with Tijuana. It's just about 25 miles south of where I'm right now in San Diego. Tijuana is disputed territory between the Sinaloa and the CJNG cartels. And it's a disputed territory because it's the largest land port in the Western Hemisphere. So the cartel that controls Tijuana is going to control probably the best port to use for trafficking drugs and illegal aliens into the United States. So I think Tijuana right now, in terms of security, is sort of a ground zero. I think it's routinely ranked as the most dangerous city in the world right now. Another one would be Juarez along the Texas border. And then deeper into Mexico, Monterrey, Guadalajara, and increasingly in Mexico City, which for a long time was one of the few truly safe places to be in Mexico. It's becoming a more dangerous place.
It's a truly widespread problem. So Mark Morgan, on the flip side, from one nation to another, to Washington, D.C., obviously capital of the United States, we have our own challenges, actually wide-ranging challenges, but our purpose today is to focus on immigration and border security. So we'll talk about those. What are the 2 or 3 specific things the Biden administration has done that they've changed already that have prompted what you see as an imminent crisis?
Well, Kevin, before I get into that, let me foot stomp on a couple of things Josh said, because he was absolutely right. So let's first talk about the relationships and the cooperation with the government of Mexico and the Central American countries. Josh is spot on. Those relationships are stronger on the immigration front than they ever have been in the history of dealing with immigration. For the first time, the Central American countries, the government of Mexico, are stepping up, partnering with the United States to see it as a regional crisis as it is. Look at the caravans going on right now. Prior to Biden winning the presidency, we hadn't seen CBP on our borders, a large caravan, in well over a year. And now we've already seen multiple containing thousands of individuals. But hey, what's happening? The government of Guatemala and Mexico, they're stopping them. They're disbanding them. It's working. Here's what I would like to add to what Josh said, is that at some point, if you're Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries that are stepping up and devoting a lot of resources, energy, and political capital to address the illegal immigration crisis. But now the United States has done a 180-degree shift in our policies and now have really turned to open border strategies. We are now driving the immigration crisis. At some point, the Northern Triangle countries in Mexico is going to say, hey, wait a minute, we're doing our part, you're not doing your part. That's one thing that I'm afraid of. And so, and then as far as, what we're seeing, look, it's very clear, again, to put something Josh said, the cartels and the smuggling organizations, they own all 2,000 miles of that U.S. Mexico border. There is nothing that gets across Mexico in the United States that the cartels and smugglers don't touch, own, or charge for. And that's a fact. And that's something that we have to continue to focus on. Now, let me answer your question directly. Look, within just a couple of hours of Biden being sworn in as a president, he puts out what I said from the beginning was unconstitutional and unlawful, that stopping deportations. I mean, if you think about this, he signed an order that was actually goes against current law, congressional statutory law, the Immigration Nationality Act, that really governs who should be removed and how. And he said, we're just going to stop it. I'm not going to do it. Now, luckily, your AG stepped in, and I wish more would have done this and joined in and filed a suit against that and won, and that was enjoined. But if you think about that, what he's wanting to do is stop deportations for 100 days, unless basically you're a terrorist or a convicted violent criminal. And the word convicted is key. Let me boil this down to something I think everybody can understand. So to put it in perspective, you could be a known gang member, known by ICE through their investigations, here illegally, known gang member, and could have been convicted or charged with a non-aggravated crime, including a felony, and that individual not deported under this executive order. It goes in addition to that. A White House directed, DHS provided memo talks about the immigration priorities. It goes back to the Obama-Biden administration, where they reduced and restricted the ICE's enforcement actions considerably. Now, the current DHS memo on enforcement restrictions is even more restrictive than it was under the Biden administration. The bottom line, ICE, they are single-handedly, systematically reducing and removing ICE's enforcement capabilities with memo after memo. Right now, again, unless you're a terrorist or a convicted aggravated felon, ICE, this is not a priority. You can't go question people, you can't go apprehend them, and you sure can't deport them. That is unbelievable, and that is an issue for every town, city, and state in this country. And then let's real quick, a couple other things are very important. The wall. Look, he stopped building the wall, which is, by the way, is going to cost taxpayers billions of dollars to stop building the wall. It's going to cost 5,000 jobs. And it's going to take an integral tool away from Border Patrol agents on the front line of our nation's borders by taking away a piece of infrastructure. You know, it's always been, our strategy's always been multi-layered: infrastructure, technology, and personnel. Now they're taking away one of those significant and essential aspects of the multi-layered strategy. It's going to make their job more dangerous and our country less safe because of that. And the other thing that I would say that they've already started and they're going to expand the rescission of is MPP, the Migrant Protection Protocol, as of most media calls it, the Remain in Mexico policy. That policy in itself is what is one of the essential ingredients in the network of initiatives and policies President Trump gave us that it stopped the catch and release that we were going through, that 500,000 in 2019 that I referred to. In 2020, that was under 1,000. Think about that. We went from 500,000 we released into the interior United States, never to be heard from again, to less than 1,000. That's gone now. And what we're also hearing now, executive orders are going to come, that the very agreement that Josh talked about, the unprecedented agreements that I've talked about with Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries, is specifically on the third safe country, meaning if you have a legitimate claim, and think about this, you're a migrant, you have a legitimate asylum claim, right, which is very narrow, but shouldn't we be pushing people and encouraging people to seek relief in the first country they come to? That really is the international standard. And that's what these asylum cooperative agreements were all about, is that if someone has a legitimate asylum claim, we are encouraging Guatemala, Mexico to be that safe third country and give that immigrant a chance to get relief immediately, instead of turning themselves over and making the dangerous trek with respect to the human smugglers all the way to the Mexican border. That's what we're seeing right now. It's all being undone.
Well, thanks, Mark, for that thorough analysis. So, Josh, I want to pick up with a couple of things that Mark said and pitch them your way. The first is the effectiveness of the wall. You know, at TPPF, we're an all of the above border security organization. In fact, we've started, as the two of you are aware, something called the Border Security Coalition. The purpose of that, of course, is to help secure the border, to sustain the rule of law, something important to you, given your profession as an attorney, and to Mark as a law enforcement guy. But most of all, for people north of the border, for those of us who have the privilege of waking up here each day, but also future immigrants, because, you know, we first need to have a transparent system with the rule of law, with border security, before we can do anything to sustain the American dream, which attracts migrants here. But the point is, for you, given your typical perspective from south of the border, what's the impact of the wall been, and what's the impact of this decision by President Biden to stop construction of the wall going to be?
Well, physical barriers are important. There's no question about that. And the work that has been done to repair and to expand the wall on the southwest border in the last 4 years has been good. It's been important to us from a security standpoint going forward. However, most drugs, most illegal persons, most guns that go south, most bulk cash that goes south, that's drug-related proceeds, are going straight through ports. Or through tunnels. So I think that the work that was done on the wall in the last 4 years under Trump, improving it, is good. It's important. I think ceasing that work is not a good strategy. On the other hand, I think that an investment in better technology at the ports for CBP officers and really a better ability to detect tunnels, because that's the only thing that we just don't do very good. We just don't do very well as U.S. law enforcement is find tunnels, and there are an awful lot of them out there along the southwest border, stretching from California through Texas. The Sinaloa cartel has used tunnels for decades. We rarely find them, and in 2021, that the technology should be there for us to be able to do that better.
Yeah, give us a sense, Josh.
Kevin.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. So if I could add a little bit about that. So the walls, again, if you go to the experts of Border Patrol on the border every single day, they're going to tell you hands down that walls work, and walls are, again, an effective and essential part of that multi-layer strategy of technology, personnel, and infrastructure. And here's a key distinction, is that the infrastructure, we've never said it's impenetrable. The wall helps as a good, effective impedance and denial tool. What it does is it helps the Border Patrol response time to get to the border and apprehend those who are crossing illegally. Look, if you ask a lot of Border Patrol agents, if you had a choice between the wall itself, steel and concrete, and like access roads, you know, a lot of Border Patrol agents are going to tell you access roads. The key difference under the Trump administration is we didn't have to ask the Border Patrol agents to make that choice, because the wall system going in included the steel and concrete access roads, lighting, and, as Josh said, it also included state-of-the-art technology, which doesn't get discussed enough. The only thing that I would like to massage a little bit that Josh said is about the drugs coming in and the illegal folks coming in. Yes, statistically speaking, we seize more that are coming in through the ports. That's correct. But there's still a tremendous amount of drugs that are coming in between the ports of entry. The majority of illegal aliens that are come in between the ports of entry. I always say, who do you think the population that's coming illegally? It's not the upstanding citizens that are coming in and sitting down and giving up to the Border Patrol. It's the criminals, and they're making their way strategically in between the ports of entry, fighting, escaping, invading Border Patrol, and getting into the interior United States, never to be heard from again. So, and then with respect to technology, I think this is another, kind of misunderstanding of what was happening under the Trump administration. So we were pursuing technology. Let's take the ports of entry, for example, NII, non-intrusive inspection. That really is a game changer at the ports of entry. Under the past 4 years, $700 to $800 million have been set aside and allocated through appropriations for NII technology at the ports of entry. From large scale that can look at and inspect big tractor trailers, to vehicles, to handheld devices that can be used effectively when they have to in secondary. So the technology is being pursued. In addition to that, in between the ports of entry, we're pursuing now, it's called autonomous towers, state-of-the-art technology that actually infuses and uses artificial intelligence. Never been done before. That also happened over the past 4 years. In addition to that, I talked about the wall system, that state-of-the-art technology. I don't want to give too much away, but that's also been a game changer to be able to effectively help the Border Patrol agents on the border communicate. And the last thing I'll say about tunnel technology, it's a tough nut to crack. It is, and it has been. We've gone to other countries that have similar issues, and I can tell you that tremendous amount of brain power, funding is going to pursue tunnel technology. We're getting better. And the last thing I'll say about technology as well that we've been pursuing for the past few years is UAS. So look, we're seeing more utilization of unmanned aerial platforms. And that's, again, another challenging issue domestically to be able to handle. But we're also putting a lot of effort and time and energy and technology to get better at that as well. So what I would say is, although a lot of the attention has been paid to the wall, I can assure you that throughout this administration, we have not only discussed, but got support both from subject matter expertise and funding to really address all of that multi-layer strategy, the infrastructure and technology.
Well, thanks for that color, Mark, especially given your bird's eye view and leadership on those issues. I want to pitch back to you, Josh, and give our viewers, you're trying to get as comprehensive an understanding of this as they can. Given, as Mark said, all of the attention on the wall and other aspects of border security generally, what's the scope of the tunnel problem? From the westernmost part of the border to the easternmost part of the border? Do we have a sense of the number of tunnels? I'm sure our audience would appreciate understanding how significant a challenge that is.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is that we don't know what we don't know. We don't know exactly how many are there because we can't find them. But we tend to find a tunnel, at least in the district where I was in AUSA until December. We would find a tunnel here in California every year or two.
Yeah.
And it would cause great celebration. You'd always find illegal drugs within the tunnel and huge numbers, seizure numbers. But the problem is that happens way too infrequently. And if you, in terms of numbers, I don't know what it is, but I know that if you just have one good tunnel that is used effectively and that CBP or DEA or HSI doesn't find, you can move drugs, you can move money, you can move people through that all day long. So if the number along the southwest border is 100 or if it's 1,000, all they really need are a couple of really good ones that we can't find, and they can move stuff across all day.
And that's what I assume from just a layman's common sense point of view. But I think that provides a sense of the challenge of border security between the United States and Mexico. I and some of our colleagues here at the foundation have taken a couple of trips down to the border, one aspect of the border, one part of the border. And it's just amazing how challenging it is to secure the border. The two of you know that because of the work that you've done, but that's something, regardless of whether someone's a Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative, it is just a fact of life. It's a very difficult border to protect. And so, Mark, I want to come back to you as we begin ever so slowly to make a pivot from diagnosing the problem to looking at solutions, to ask you a follow-up question. And that is, given all of the investments that the Trump administration led into, say, technology to find tunnels, into erecting the border, the wall, are we going to see a deterioration of that progress because of what the Biden administration is doing or is not going to do?
So, Kevin, I think that's a good point. Yes or no? And look, let's. I would like to add a little bit more on the tunnels too, because sometimes we talk about technology, and this is what I'm concerned about the Biden administration and the Democratic platform on this. Right? They try to force a binary choice. Right? So they'll try to say what we want to focus on is technology on the southwest border. Well, that's great. I'm all for more technology, but not in replace of the other parts of the strategy, like infrastructure and personnel. I always used to say we need it all, including the wall, but they try to make it a binary choice. The last time that I saw is that all the technology in the world isn't going to physically apprehend somebody illegally trying to cross the border. So we need it all. We need every element of that multi-layer strategy. And what I would say about the technology as far as tunnels go as well, one is like I said, the technology is getting better and we are improving on the identification. But technology is only one element of this. Another thing that Department of Justice by AG Barr really led was a task force interagency kind of USG approach to actually use intelligence and investigative resources to find stuff like tunnels. At the end of the day, improving our ability to use confidential human sources and using intelligence to understand the threat and use that intelligence to drive operations and investigative priorities and resources, that's always going to be the key. A threat-based, intelligence, data-driven, operationally focused approach will beat technology any day. And that's another thing that we were improving across the southwest border with respect to that.
Thanks so much for that follow-up, Mark. So I want to ask a couple more questions, guys, before we turn to the audience questions. By the way, if you're in the audience and you already know you have a question, you can go to the comment section of wherever you're watching this video and type it in, and we'll try to get to as many as we can here shortly. But the first of these two final questions of you before we do that, Josh, the first one to you. This is what in our daily work as we're thinking about legislative solutions, whether at the state level or the federal level, we call magic wand thinking. So we want to start with the aspirational vision of how we're going to fix this problem that we've identified. Obviously, the two of you have done a masterful job of laying out the problem for our audience of the border and what's going on in Mexico. I'm going to give you a magic wand, Josh, and I'm going to give you 2 or 3 opportunities to do some things that fix the problem. What are they?
I think that the number one thing I would do with the magic wand would be to make lives better for the people in the Northern Triangle countries. Most asylum seekers that come up through the border are coming from Guatemala, Honduras, or El Salvador, and most of them at El Salvador. Relatively small percentage are actually coming from Mexico, or actually Mexicans moving into the United States. And the reason they're coming up is because of the living conditions down there, because of the crime, because of the prevalence of the Northern Triangle gangs, 18th Street and MS-13, and just the economic destitution in those countries right now. So I think that one thing that's positive that I've seen proposed by Biden in this first week has been an increase in aid to the Northern Triangle countries. Now that should be coupled with a requirement that they continue to enforce their borders as they have in working with the Trump administration to prevent the caravans from coming north. So there should be strings attached to it. But I think that a focus on making lives better for the people in those Northern Triangle countries should be a top priority. And then this is not really a legislative proposal, but I think in terms of policy, with the National Security Council and the state and justice departments and Homeland Security Department is we need to start treating Mexico as what it is. It's a failing state, and B, it's a corrupt government, and deal with them on that basis, and stop releasing defendants who we've arrested in the United States because they happen to be former members of the Mexican government, we need to get tougher with Mexico, with the government of Mexico, much tougher with the government of Mexico. So
And there are two, no, thank you. The two aspects of your solutions there that are striking to me. The first is here, we're always trying to find solutions that are as far upstream from the problem as we can. And you've done that, obviously. If somehow we could wave a magic wand and improve the living conditions of the millions of people who live in those countries, that would be great just from the standpoint of human flourishing, but obviously it would also aid this problem. The second is, and I think it's crucial to remember this, that we also need to step out of the political correctness of the age, which prevents so many Americans from understanding that you can call Mexico corrupt and understand you're not making a comment about Mexican people. You can call China evil and you're not making a comment about Chinese people. The point is, there used to be a time, maybe when the three of us were coming of age, when our leaders, Democrats and Republicans, when it came to foreign powers, foreign countries who were trouble, would just say it. And it would be nice if maybe in the 21st century, we can see more of that by leaders on both sides. Mark Morgan, same question. I know given your focus, you probably will wave your magic wand in a little bit different area, but maybe together with your respective magic wand solutions, we can get there. What would you do?
So before things nationally that I would do, one is we have to fix the Flores settlement agreement. That's a disastrous, incomprehensible court ruling that we've had to live with that says that we can only hold people who have illegally entered to 20 days. In this country, then we have to release them. It's not enough to get through the process. It's disastrous. We have to have a legislative congressional fix for that. The second thing is Tdpra, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, right? Which says that if you're from a non-contiguous country, we treat that unaccompanied minor different. If you're from Mexico or Canada and you're a child that comes, we reunite you with your family in your country. If you're from outside those countries, we have to keep you. That has to be fixed. I've actually had discussions with leaders from all three of the Northern Triangle countries that said, can you please fix your laws so you can give our youth the future of our country back instead of keeping them? The next thing that has to be fixed is the initial stage of credible fear. That standard is really non-existent. You could basically say anything. You could be easily coached. Some have a piece of paper that they read from, and it gets them past the first stage of the credible fear process and then gets them into this system. It's absolutely absurd. It's no standard at all. The other thing that needs to be addressed, which is already going downhill, is ICE's enforcement ability, specifically on the ability to detain. Look, at the height in 2019, they had over 55,000 individuals in detention that they were ready to remove or going through the process. FY21, that's bed space was reduced to 30,000. If we remove ICE's enforcement authorities and abilities and remove and reduce their ability to detain, you will absolutely continue to drive illegal immigration. Those are the four things nationally that I would do. Now, in addition to that, what I'd like to do is foot stomp on something Josh said as well. Look, and this is something important that's really frustrating me already, is the Biden administration is simply repackaging and remarketing what's already been done. We've already been given tremendous aid to the Northern Triangle countries for a very long time, but there was corruption involved. That funding was not being utilized effectively as it should. And so we need to make sure that if we do invest in the Northern Triangle countries and we give more, one, we've got to make sure that it's going to what it needs. First of all, it has to go to infrastructure. It has to go to ports of entry and the global supply chain importers. I work with this. I talk to stakeholders and global supply chains and global companies that said, hey, they're eager to invest in the Northern Triangle countries, but they've got to have some reassurance that stuff that's coming in and going out is protected. It's protected from counterfeit. It's protected from corruption. The other thing that has to happen with that investment in those countries is continuing national security. CBP, as well as a whole bunch of USG investigative entities, have invested personnel down there to help build up their ability to strengthen their national security. You're not going to get corporations and industry, global stakeholders to invest funding in a country that they believe is unsecure and unsafe. So it's not just about giving money, it's giving money in the right issues and the right location. And the last thing that I'd like to foot stomp on is, look, it's very clear. The overwhelming volume of illegal immigration is driven because of economics. They want a better way of life. Now, while we all understand that, you need to do it legally. So this is about illegal immigration. And right now, if you look back in 2019, Josh is right, is that 65% were Northern coming from the Northern Triangle countries. During this last year, during the global pandemic, that has shifted. It's about a 50-50 split right now between Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries right now. And why? Because we know every time there's worsening economic conditions, whether it's Mexico or in the Western Hemisphere, that drives an increase of illegal immigration. And right now, COVID has devastated economic conditions in the Western Hemisphere. That's what's driving the numbers up. And now with the open border policies, we're seeing a significant spike. You've seen the caravans. The crisis has already begun.
Well, again, thanks for your thoroughness, Mark. I know our audience members appreciate it, so much so that we have several questions flooding the comments box. And so we'll get to as many of them as we can. This first one, we'll start with Josh, but Mark, I'm sure you'll want to weigh in as well. So Josh, you first. This audience member asks, why is it that the Biden administration encourages illegal immigration over legal immigration? They also follow on and say, what are your thoughts on the dangers of illegal immigration? And why is this issue so important that it's unfolding so quickly, so early in the new administration?
That's a great question. I think it's a question that a lot of people probably wish they had the answer to right now. The notion of amnesty for all illegal immigrants in the United States, the problem with that is it's a huge carrot for anyone in the Northern Triangle who might think that they want to migrate up to the United States. They can put a date on it and say, before November of 2020 or before January 2021 that there won't be amnesty. But the problem is that no one knows when an illegal immigrant actually comes into the country. So if that policy is eventually carried forward, and hopefully there's enough opposition in the Senate, but if it is, then I think you're just putting a huge incentive out there on the table for migrants to come up to the United States and try to claim asylum. And I think we could see a true crisis at the border because of that, and it would be a humanitarian crisis.
Mark?
Yes, I'm going to be more direct here, and this is from a law and order perspective. I've been serving this country in the military and law enforcement for almost 35 years. I served 20 years in the FBI. I lived in El Paso. I know that southwest border very well. And what I can tell you, the open border strategies right now by the Biden administration make no sense whatsoever from a law enforcement perspective. It absolutely is creating loopholes, as Josh said. It's creating incentives for people to come here illegally. It's making a mockery out of what I think is the basis of every civilized society of law and order and laws. Again, his first executive order was to actually go against the law on the books. It makes no sense from a law and order perspective. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to be bold. In my opinion, what I'm seeing, this is power and politics being put over public safety. Nothing else makes more sense to me. If you look at what's actually going on right now, the incentives, think about it right now. So what the message that you're sending, you might as well get billboards, Kevin, and put them in the Western Hemisphere that says our borders are open. Because right now, if you come to our borders illegally, we're going to release you into the interior United States, never to be heard from again. We're going to protect you from lawful deportation. And then we're going to reward you with expansion of DACA, amnesty, free healthcare. And of course, we're going to support sanctuary cities. That just makes no sense for me from a law enforcement sovereign nation perspective. And so I can draw no other conclusion that they're putting politics above public safety. That's my opinion.
Yeah, great headline. I happen to agree. All of us at TPPF do. So Josh, and ask you a question specifically, and then Mark, come back to you with a different question. Josh, this is a question from an audience member about Mexico in particular. Obviously, you know a lot about it. They're curious, what will it take to get Mexico to cease being a failed state? What can happen there? Which is a big question. I'm a historian, so there's a lot to that question, but we want to be as hopeful as we can. What needs to start happening there internally?
I think that the thing about corruption is that once you shine a light on it, it tends to begin to go away. And I think that's the only way to deal with the corruption in Mexico. And it's not just Mexico, it's throughout Latin America, Honduras. And this is just to go to a point Mark made. The Honduran government is a narco state. It's a straight up narco state. And should we be, sending money south to a narco state to do with what they want, what they want down there in terms of foreign aid? I think absolutely not. I think you have to deal with the Honduran government first, diplomatically. So within Mexico, one thing that we've tried to do on the U.S. law enforcement side in the last couple of years is focus on investigating and prosecuting government actors who are protecting drug cartels. And we've had some success doing that here in San Diego, working with some great prosecutors and agents out in Brooklyn, New York. There are some cases right now in the pipeline, some trials set that I think that if those trials go forward, the testimony once it hits the New York Times is going to surprise and shock a lot of people about as regards the extent of the corruption problem down there. So I think from our side, we as U.S. law enforcement, we need to continue to make those cases, build those cases against Mexican politicians, Mexican law enforcement, Mexican military on corruption. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the citizens of Mexico to look at their leadership and decide that it's time to begin to elect better leaders.
And that takes something that is in short supply, whether in the populace or in elected officials, courage. So something that probably requires some prayer too. But thanks for that insight. Mark Morgan, different question from different audience member. They want to go back to something you mentioned, and that is the Migrant Protection Protocol. High level, what is it? Can you explain more? Why is it such a problem that this is being changed by the current administration?
So Kevin, great question. This is the question. MPP, the Migrant Protection Protocol, as the media calls it, the Remain in Mexico. This policy was the game changer. It allowed CBP to stop, catch, and release. Again, remember, I got to say, because it's important, CBP and ICE combined 2019, we had to release because of loopholes, 500,000 people that came to this country illegally in the United States, never to be heard from again. MPP stopped that. Not only right when we started implementing, people coming across, we returned them to Mexico. They were not being released into the interior United States, but they were still giving more due process in this country than any other country on the face of this planet would give somebody that illegally entered this country. But more importantly, what it sent a message to the cartels, the smugglers, and the migrants themselves. No longer were you going to be allowed into this country. You were going to come here, you were going back. That alone is what resulted in a 75% reduction in the families coming from the Northern Triangle country. And in 2019, that was about, like I said, 65% of the crisis we were experiencing. It was a game changer. Biden administration has taken that away. It was a memo directed by the White House from DHS down to the CBP saying you can no longer enroll people in MPP. And my understanding is tomorrow, executive order, at least conversation with President Biden, he's going to eliminate MPP altogether. And I'm telling you right now, we're averaging about 2,500 a day, people coming in the southwest border illegally. If you remember, the former secretary under Obama and then Vice President Biden said 1,000 was a bad day. That's about the only comment on immigration policy I agreed with. So we've got 2,500 a day. Why doesn't it seem like a crisis? Because we have the policies to address it regardless of the numbers. They've just taken away the game changer, one of the most essential tools that we have to address the illegal immigration crisis. And why doesn't that 2,500 seem like a crisis, even though they've taken that away? Because we still have Title 42. The CDC's order, because of COVID, still allows Border Patrol to apprehend individuals, process them at the border, and return them to Mexico, usually within 2 hours. Here's the challenge. Because they've already gotten rid of MPP, they're going to get ready to do away with the asylum cooperative agreements with the Northern Triangle countries. Once Title 42 goes away, and at some point it will, that 2,500 will become a crisis the next day. It will be unbelievable. And that's where we're headed.
Well, I was afraid that we'd get to this point in the live stream where there's no way it seems of avoiding the crisis. We, write the headline for our audience. We are absolutely almost full speed going toward a crisis that of the same level that we saw a few years ago. And our hope in talking about this hard issue today, and we'll come back at it probably once a month, is to shine light on the problem. So maybe there can be enough political will in the nation's capital and state capitals to do something about it.
Speaking Kevin, if I could, I'm sorry, I don't interrupt you. What I would say is the crisis has already begun. Yep. I mean, it's not that it's coming. It's already begun. I mean, the caravans is just a microcosm of that. Ask the immigrants themselves, quote, President Biden has given us 100 days to get to the U.S. border. We're already having people stack up on the Mexico side of the U.S. border waiting to get in. We don't know what's going to happen to the migrant protection protocol. The 10 to 12,000 people we have waiting in Mexico right now, when that goes away, are they going to be allowed in? I could keep going and going. The crisis has already begun.
No, I appreciate that clarification. My point was merely one about numbers, that we can expect the numbers to have a dramatic increase. But your point's correct and well taken, that the crisis is upon us. It's going to worsen the deeper into this administration we get, and that's unfortunate. Most of the time we spend here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, even though we have a DC office and work on national issues like immigration and border security, is on state issues. In Texas, of course, we have a big focus on that southern border. We have a long history of peoples of different backgrounds, not only getting along well, but having families together and building businesses together, even before Texas was an independent Republican state. And so we see the optimism, we have the optimism that people should have when the border works well. The point, Josh, I'll turn to you first, is there anything that border states can do through their own legislatures to help mitigate this crisis that, as Mark says correctly, has already begun?
I think from a security standpoint, one of the concerns that if I were a Texas citizen living along the border, that I would have is that border has been disputed for at least the last 15 years between parts of the Gulf Cartel, parts of the Los Zetas paramilitary organization, and to a lesser extent, the Sinaloan cartel. They generally fight each other, but they fight each other very close to the border. They generally don't have any aspirations of taking territory in the United States, but again, they're very close, very, very close to our border, and they're using military-grade weaponry. So I think one thing from a security standpoint, on a state and county level in Texas, I think there should be some attention given to the possibility that that violence is going to spill into the streets of Texas. So I think from a security standpoint, that's a good spot to focus on a state level for Texas
and
Arizona.
Yeah, thank you. And I know, knowing you well enough, that there's no hyperbole there, that's a real possibility. Mark, any suggestions for us for border state legislatures?
Yeah, exactly what your AG just did. Right? Quintessential example, fine standing. And I think, look, let's take Texas, for example. If you look right now, RGV has been the epicenter for illegal immigration for a long time. Laredo, drugs, you've got more tractor trailers coming through commercial cargo than any other port just about on the southwest border, except maybe one in San Diego, right? Let's take a look at El Paso, where I lived on the border for a couple of years when I was the FBI SEC there. Look, Texas is the epicenter in many areas, whether it's illegal immigration, drugs, human trafficking, you name it. So look, any opportunity where you can find, look, the AG, one of the court's statements, and your terrific AG that put forth a suit on, the EO on stopping deportation, is it said immediate harm by doing this would cause immediate harm to the state of Texas. Spot on. And that's what we need to do. Let's take a look at a couple other things that can be done. Continue to work task force operations, right? And look, you take Texas DPS, they're great. They really work with Border Patrol every single day to utilize resources and task force environment to help secure the border across the board. It's been a terrific relationship. Another thing we could do from an investigative standpoint is continue to use those task forces to work with the government of Mexico and really focus on southbound operations. If you looked at what we've done in the past 24 months on southbound operations to get currency, to get ammunition and weapons, has been unprecedented in the last 24 months in what we've done previously. And a big part of that is through our coordination with state law enforcement, but as well as other federal agencies within the state of Texas as well, whether it's ATF, the FBI, HSI, and the list goes on. But continue to work together is a must.
Yeah, thanks so much. I know in addition to our Attorney General, our Governor, Lieutenant Governor, our new Speaker of the House, are all concerned by this. I think that there will be political will in both chambers to take legislative action. Obviously, at the executive level, we're in good hands here. So, gentlemen, we're getting close to the top of the hour, which means we have waning time for questions. We have two more questions, one from an audience member, and then a final question that I always try to ask our guests. The last audience member question is a simple but very important one, and that is, where on the topics we've covered today do the two of you go for the best source of news? Josh, why don't you start?
My personal favorite is the Wall Street Journal. I think it's in terms of the newspaper, they're fair and balanced as fair and balanced as a news outlet gets these days. There are some other news websites that are out there that are less frequently viewed by the general public. One is Stratfor, which is a news site. I think they're actually based there in Austin, and they do a nice job of keeping track of global policy and the interrelationships between the governments throughout the world. So those are a couple of my favorites. The Economist is another good one.
Thanks.
I don't watch a lot of news on the TV though.
Yeah, I was just about to observe, and I'm a man after my own heart that read a lot of printed work. Sometimes you have to read from a lot of sources to try to corroborate to get to the truth. Morgan, what about you?
Yeah, so I find all media forms challenging. So I really don't pick one. I think what we need to do, I think what's the most important, as you said, Kevin, this has to be not about right or left, right? It has to be what is in the best interest of this country. And I look at that from a law enforcement perspective. And so I try to, what we talk about a lot of times in our circle is avoiding confirmation bias. Right. So I think what you do is if you focus on just one or two too much, you get a confirmation bias because they may start repeating what you think and what you like. What I suggest is listen to multiple forms, right? Because I think it's just as important to learn who's lying, who's providing misinformation. And I think sometimes you do that by listening to others you normally wouldn't listen to. And look, it took me a while to get from unintentional, misguided, misinformed to spin to just outright lying. And I'm telling you, there are outlets, whether it's social media, print, or national media, that there are some that are absolutely lying to the American people.
Spoken so well by an FBI veteran. Just love it. but both of you give some great points and some good possibilities there. So thank you. So gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for a great conversation. I always try to carve out some time when we get through as many audience questions as we can, and audience members, thanks as always for excellent questions, to ask a question that is a little hard when we've been dealing with such a hard issue like immigration and border security in the failed state that is Mexico. And that is a question of optimism, of hopefulness, in spite of the challenges that we face as a country with our southern border, with immigration policy, with a lot of things. Why do you wake up each morning optimistic about America's future? Mark, we'll start with you.
Because this is the greatest country on the face of the globe. I absolutely look. We have challenges, and we have them every single year. And look, I believe in the American people. Kevin, I know this is sappy. I know this is corny, but I believe in our resiliency. I believe in our resolve. I believe in our strength and our character of the American people. And even in the face of adversity, we have shown decade after decade, century after century, we will overcome. And as horrendous as I see the policies happening right before our eyes under this administration, I know if we continue to come together and unite and speak and understand that our vote matters and 2022 matters and 2022 and beyond matters, I still have faith in this country. But get involved, make sure your voice is heard. Well
said. Thank you. Josh Jones.
Yeah, absolutely agree with Mark. We've been in hard times in the history of our country before. We've been through a civil war. We've been through 2 world wars the last century. We're going through a very difficult time now, and a very confusing time right now. But like Mark said, we're a nation of people that can figure things out. And when the pendulum swings in one direction, as it has here in the last year, it tends to swing the other direction soon thereafter. So as Mark said, hopefully 2022 will be the point at which that pendulum begins to swing back. But we are a country that is great because we have great people in it. We have great people who run it, and whatever problem that is there, this is a country that figures it out and moves forward.
Well, that's well said, gentlemen. So to Josh Jones and Mark Morgan, thank you so much on behalf of all of us at the Texas Public Policy Foundation for making time for this. Your rational approach to this very thorny issue, I think, has given us all not just a deeper sense of a deeper knowledge of it, but perhaps an even clearer sense of what needs to be done. And I think that first step, to pick up on what Josh just said, is to make sure that we're paying attention, that we're not apathetic, putting our noses in the corner because we think all is lost. This country has endured and then flourished after many, many challenges. And obviously we're dealing with one now. I think it all starts coming from this leader of a think tank with knowing the issues that are the thorniest really well, reading reality truthfully, and then finding people who are really leading solutions to lead us out of that wilderness. And in Mark Morgan and Josh Jones, you've done that. Obviously here at the foundation, we will do everything in our power to give them a platform to advocate for a much brighter future for America's border security, for this country, and for that matter, for our southern neighbors. To all of you in the audience, thanks for making time for this. You are terrific. May the Lord continue to prosper the work of your hands, and may God continue to bless this great country. Take care.